For whatever questions he cares to pose to the panel.
Thank the chairman. There's been a lot of discussion in the media about whether this reduces spending or caps spending, or if it does not do that. So I want to get to the bottom of that. The president said in a tweet, "It is an important step forward that reduces spending." Ranking Member Boyle, do you agree that this reduces spending?
I believe that in terms of defense spending, it includes a 3% increase. With respect to non-defense discretionary, it is a small decrease over this past fiscal year 2023.
Thank you. Mr. Estes, do you think this bill reduces spending or will cause a reduction in spending?
This bill will cause a reduction in spending based on the budget caps.
Ranking Member Thompson, do you believe this is going to reduce spending or cause a reduction? You do? I'm sorry. I do. And what about you, Chairman Smith? Is this going to reduce spending?
Yes, it will reduce spending without increasing taxes. I know the prior representative was talking about the president's budget that will reduce the deficit by $3 trillion, but in that same budget, the president increases taxes by $5 trillion.
Thank you. Another question I'll start with Ranking Member Boyle. Can you describe how this, on page 12, it's called section 102, how the 1% cut would take effect on January 1st, 2024?
Sorry, I don't, are you referencing the legislation?
Yeah, referencing the legislation. There's a section 102, which purports to cut the CR, if there is a CR, by 1% on January 1st, 2024. Can you tell us about that? The reason I'm asking is I'm surprised to see the White House agreed to it. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I did not have the bill in front of us, but I thank my friend Ron Estes, who is better, obviously, on the internet than I am. So can you refer to you're talking about section 12, which?
Page 12, section 102, special adjustments for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. I believe this bill calls for an automatic 1% spending cut across the board on January 1st, 2024, if we haven't passed 12 appropriations bills by then.
Right, that was, you hadn't mentioned that last part. That's the provision, I'm just going to go off my general knowledge of it. That is the provision that if the 12 appropriations bills are not passed by midnight September 30th, then an automatic 1% reduction, both to defense and non-defense, would kick in.
And I think the idea behind that is if we haven't done 12 bills to get people to the table, does anybody want to comment on that? Mr. Estes.
Part of the process that we operate under when we operate under regular order, and it was the stick, if you will, and as the ranking member pointed out, it unlike some of the other provisions, it applies to both sides, both non-defense and defense. Idea being that it would push everybody to do their job.
That's the remarkable thing to me about that provision of this bill, that Republicans and Democrats came together for once, and instead of saying, I'll increase military if you'll increase these social programs, they said in this deal between the president and Speaker McCarthy, if you're willing to put your priorities on the line, we're willing to put our priorities on the line as a tool to drive us all to the table to do our job that we haven't done in full since 1997. The Budget Act of 1974 tells us, Congress, to go through this process where we now are supposed to pass 12 separate bills. And we used to do more of that when I first got here, and then we've almost sort of given up on it. What I always appreciated about that process when I first got here, and I'm going to implicate my own party in this, but When I first got here 10 years ago, we had an amendment process on the floor on all of the 12 appropriations bills where Democrat, Republican, you could walk up to the clerk, hand a handwritten amendment, as long as it cut spending, as long as it didn't increase spending, those were in order. And that was a wonderful process, I thought. Now, we didn't see it to conclusion. We didn't get the Senate to agree with those. Like I said, 1997 is the last time that happened, and I wasn't here at the time. I'm wondering if anybody in the room was. But since then, we've never even got to a third of them done. And when I say done, I don't mean just in the House. I mean passed in the Senate and signed into the law by the president. Now, implicating my own party in this, when we went from John Boehner to Speaker Boehner to Speaker Ryan, we dropped the amendment process. And the other requirement for those amendments is they had to be germane. You couldn't offer some pork belly thing in the bill, and it couldn't increase spending, and it had to be germane. I'm glad that we're going to get back to that. The question for us, though, is the Senate going to come to the table? And again, my criticism is bipartisan here when I talk about the Senate. I think we can all appreciate that. They're the real enemy most of the time, not the other party. Yes. So the question is, are they going to come to the table? And so the remarkable thing to me about this 1%, where everything is cut if people haven't done their jobs by then, is that it applies to the Senate too. Like the Senate is going to, I hope, is going to feel some pressure to work on 12 bills. Instead of sending us a giant omnibus bill the day before the government funding runs out and saying, pass the Senate version or the House will be responsible for the shutdown. Assuming that we do, I think we're going to get to 12 bills here in the House, and I think we've been promised an open process where we can all offer amendments, and I know that puts a lot of people in the crosshairs because there's some things we don't always want to vote on, but up or down you vote, and then the bill comes out, and we'll send those to the Senate. I don't have as much faith in the Senate. Again, it's just not pejorative with respect to the party that controls the Senate. They just have a far worse record than the House of getting to these 12 appropriations. We've given it the team try since I've been here. Now we've never got it done because the Senate doesn't even give it the team try. They're going to have to try, or else if we end up on January 1st, 2024, with a CR that we will have to do presumably because the Senate may not have their homework done. I hope after I give the speech, I do hope we get our homework done after implicating them. But, on January 1st, 2024, that's a 1% cut. And we can't sit here on that day and point fingers at the other party because we are going into this together. Assuming this passes on the floor, both parties have agreed. The pain will be to both sides. We're not taking hostages. You might consider this an abuse of the hostage by cutting it 1% or just. But I think that's important. I think it's remarkable that it made it into this bill. When we're talking about the Save, Limit, Grow, what was Limit, Grow, Save? I don't remember the name of the other bill. By the way, if you know me, I've never voted on a bill based on its name, so I don't remember the names. But while we're talking about differences, and I know a lot of people are disappointed, a lot of Republicans, maybe not Democrats, but a lot of Republicans are disappointed that many of the provisions in that bill, if not most of the provisions in that bill, did not make it into this bill. But there is one way in which I think this bill got better, and it is this 1% cut that we are all agreeing to if we vote for this bill, Republican and Democrat, come January 1st. If we haven't done our homework, and if the Senate hasn't done their homework, and if the president hasn't signed those bills, so everybody is going to be in this responsible for the outcome. And that is where the spending happens. Okay, we can try in the debt limit to say we're going to control spending, I mean, we're borrowing the money. This is like, I explained this on social media. This week, we're taking out a second mortgage to pay off the credit cards. But it's not until October that we buy the bass boat, the tanning booth, and the flat screen TV. Like, the spending of that money is going to happen to the degree it does happen on October 1st. And that really is where, if we want to control the overall amount of spending, and if there are policies or things that we don't see happening that need to happen, or if there are things that are happening that shouldn't be happening in the administrative branch, then that's our opportunity. I don't like this process that led to this bill. I'm not going to lie. Sending one person to go into a room with another person and no cameras there, and then they come out and say up or down, take it or leave it, that is not a good process. But that's not the process we're going to follow when we get to the appropriations. And the one redeeming, there are things to dislike and things to like about this bill, but the redeeming portion for me is Section 102, where we all come to the table. We're forced, Senate, House, Republican, Democrat, President, everybody, forced to come to the table and do our job, pass all 12 appropriations bills if we haven't at that point, and there'll be a 1% cut. Now, I'm reluctant to disclose how I might vote on this rule at this moment because then all the cameras leave. Dramatic pause. But let me, I talked to Chairman Cole before I came on this committee, and we talked about the need for this committee and why this committee exists. It's the oldest committee in the House of Representatives. It can be the most partisan committee. It has been called the Speaker's Committee. I would say it's not really appropriate to call it the Speaker's Committee, at least this Congress, given that 3 of us were chosen to voice our own opinion. It's not to say that everybody doesn't have good opinions on here, but yeah. I don't want to lose everybody on this committee. But it is an important committee, and with it comes a lot of responsibility. You could stop anything in this committee from coming to the floor. You can control every amendment that comes to the floor with this committee. You can undo the good work of the other committees because their bills come through this committee, or you can improve, depending on your perspective. But my interest in being on this committee was not to imprint my ideology. I think that is an inappropriate use of the Rules Committee. Yes, at times we will steer it toward the majority, the outcomes, and both parties do that, but it's not our job to imprint an ideology. And so I think our job is to decide, is this a process we've all agreed on? Is there any kind of who-doing going on? That, for me, I always complained about the Rules Committee for 10 years. I think that's why they put me on it, so I would quit complaining, but it hasn't really helped. So today, I want to see the rule. It's not printed yet. It's not been read, but I anticipate voting for this rule. And when people want to express their ideology, the floor of the House on the actual final passage of the bill is the place to do that. What do the 13 of us owe the rest of Congress? We owe them an honest shake and a playing field that doesn't change. And so with that, the cameras are dismissed, and I yield back.
Well, I think the cameras would be well advised to stay for the ranking member. So the gentleman's recognized for any questions.